Hello, welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Feline Frame-Up, and with me today is someone that, well, I guess he tries to frame me at certain points. I don't know, I can't think of anything at this point, but it's my good friend Matt Hunter. Say hi.
Hi. Just one of those days, I guess.
Yeah, one of those days where I can't think of a funny pun. I guess if you guys can think of something funny I could have said, write it in the comments. We just want to talk about this very funny cartoon.
Yeah. One of my favorites of all time, honestly. If it's not my favorite Warner Brothers cartoon, it's certainly in my top 5. I think it's a
Yep,
masterpiece.
yep, that's why you're here. And also with me today are my good friends Luke Perkins and Eli Copperman. Say hi, guys.
Free.
Hey, how many times have I told you to leave that poor mutt alone? Oh, wait. In this case, it's a dog attacking a cat. Wrong cartoon.
But in any case, so just to go through a few bits of info. So as mentioned, this is Feline Frame-Up, released on the 13th of February 1954. It's the 702nd in the series, and it's directed by Chuck Jones. You can find this beautiful restoration on the Looney Tunes Platinum Collection Volume 1 DVD and Blu-ray set, which has all of the Mark Anthony and Pussyfoot shorts on one disc, which, if you want them all, they're all right there, which is fantastic. But in case you haven't seen this one, it's under copyright. Can't show you the full thing here on YouTube. The video will just get blocked. But since this is one of your favorites, Matt, what happens in this short?
Well, this is kind of a culmination of a series of cartoons that Chuck Jones had been doing in the 1950s. It started with Feed the Kitty, which we discussed earlier, with Mark Anthony and Pussyfoot. Mark Anthony being this big, tough bulldog who adopts a cute little kitten, tries to hide his little kitten friend from the mistress of the house, and he thinks the kitten's been baked into a cookie, and he gets really upset when he thinks that, and then he's really happy when it's not, and it's a masterpiece. Everybody knows it. Then there's one kind of in the middle that's called Kiss Me Cat that not a lot of people know about, but we talked about that one as well. There's some really good animation and artwork in that one. That was one of the first ones that had Maurice Noble as Chuck Jones' layout guy. And now we have this one that is kind of a clash of worlds, because we also had Jones' other series, which was Claude Cat. Claude was the nemesis of Hubie and Bertie, who were the two mice, Yeah, social riot. And then Jones kind of paired Claude with this character called the Frisky Puppy. I guess that's his name, Frisky Puppy, because I don't think he had any other name. And now we've got them combined with Mark Anthony and Pussyfoot and Claude Cat. And Claude Cat at this point has become a very jealous, very calculating antagonist. And so it's a combination, and it just works. It just works so well. And the timing on this cartoon, I marvel at. And just, it makes me laugh.
Oh, for sure. No, we'll definitely go through it, that's for sure. But let's go through a few bits of trivia in this one. And yeah, as you mentioned, this is the third in the Mark Anthony Pussyfoot series of shorts, and now we get Claude Cat. So I guess if this was like a TV series, this would be like the episode where we get a popular character's first appearance or something, which makes the show work. I don't know. It's like
Yeah.
Steve
Well,
Urkel appearing on Family Matters or something. I don't
right.
know.
Well, if you go back in time, I guess it could be like Archie Bunker meeting George Jefferson, or the Flintstones meet the Jetsons. It's like a crossover because these characters were established already. And so Jones is combining these characters that were unrelated before. And I think that makes it even stronger. I think it's
Yeah.
great.
Exactly, and what's interesting, if you look at the title cards of this one, see, this was made before the shutdown. See, this short was released after the shutdown of the Warner Studio, and we've only got 2 credited animators. And around this time, if you look at a lot of the Chuck Jones shorts, you have only 2 credited animators, and in some cases, even just 1, which was very fascinating. I know one of them had Ken Harris, and he was just so fast, apparently, and he just did the one himself. The other Claude Cat for this year.
Well, the credits rotated too. So obviously there were more than 2 animators on any of these cartoons. Otherwise, they'd still be waiting to finish them. But the credited animators are Dick Thompson and Abe Levito. But again, the credits rotated. So it would have been those 2 plus maybe the other ones kind of took a back seat. But they were, I don't know how many exactly were in Jones' unit at the time. but they all did it. It's just there were 2 credited at the time, and that was just the way it was. Now, the layouts on here are credited to Maurice Noble, which in that case was the staging and the design of the cartoon, and then the backgrounds credited to Phil DeGard, who actually did the painting of them. And again, that's the same as the last one with Mark Anthony and Pussyfoot, and that was Kiss Me Cat.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting about this short is that you have Robert C. Bruce, and most people will know Robert C. Bruce as the narrator of a lot of Spot Gag shorts that were done by Tex Avery and so on. And his voice is unmistakable. You hear it, you know it's Robert C. Bruce.
How many times have I told you to let that cat alone? Drop that cat! Drop him! This is my last warning. Why, Claude, what's bothering you? Drop it! Drop it! That does it! And stay out! I thought I told you to leave these cats alone!
It's so interesting to see him in a different role and hear his voice sing the Master of the House, where last time it was voiced by Mel Blanc. Why they chose Robert C. Bruce for this, there's no official reason, but you seem to have a theory on that.
Yeah, well, Robert C. Bruce was known as the narrator in a lot of the 40s Warner Brothers cartoons, and that was because he was a staple of the Warner Brothers radio station, which was called KFWB, and he knew Mel Blanc and Arthur Bryan and Bea Benaderet and some of the other people, so they were kind of an ensemble cast, and they would join the Warner Brothers studio whenever they needed backup, besides just Mel Blanc, who was the star of the Warner Brothers studio. But I think because of that, he was available at the same time he did the narration of Punch Trunk. So they probably brought him in to do this too. And they were like, hey, we have a pickup role for a master in a cartoon about a dog and cat fighting. Hey, would you be willing to do that? And he probably said, well, sure. And it's not just his traditional, well, now we bid farewell to the Isle of Pingo Pongo. He got the chance to say, I thought I told you to leave these cats alone. You know, I'm sure he probably loved that.
Yeah, something different. Yeah.
Yeah. So he just happened to be there and they needed a pickup role, and that's what he did.
Yeah, exactly. And he does a great job here. I mean, it's not exactly a deep role. It's just kind of interesting because you have Mel Blanc doing the dog voices, the whole 1, 2, 3, 4, like he's doing the counting and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And Claude.
That's part of what makes it so fun is the timing of that when Blanc does that. But that's stalling, underneath that, doing that dun, 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 dun. I almost wonder if it was Jones trying to outdo Freeling on timing on this cartoon. Like, it might have been a friendly competition thing. I don't know. But this cartoon, just the way Jones uses stalling and uses the timing and all of it works brilliantly well.
Oh, definitely. And this short, interestingly enough, if you want to see the difference between Jones in the 50s and Jones in the 60s, this was remade by Chuck in The Unshrinkable Jerry Mouse, which, as you mentioned, is not particularly great. And yeah, I guess a lot of the Jones Tom and Jerry's were hit and miss, mostly miss, unfortunately, even though they look good. But weirdly enough, I'm looking at the credits for The Unshrinkable Jerry Mouse, and sure enough, Maltese was involved with the story, but it just wasn't as sharp as this.
No, and that's the thing is this kind of is a precursor to Jones's Tom and Jerry cartoons, but it's 100% better than those. And it just proves that it's kind of like a great sports team. You have to have the exact right combination of talent at the right time. And if one or two elements are missing, there's a big difference.
Sure, you still got Ben Washam and Ken Harris. So you can have the same sort of thing, but if one element is missing or different, I mean, Maltese, by this point, he had been in Hanna-Barbera doing a lot of TV writing and that sort of stuff. So, people just change and you can get the band back together, but they may not be the same like before. So, yeah.
Yeah, they did not have Carl Stalling.
Yep, they had Eugene Podinay in that one, which is different.
And that doesn't make Podney a bad guy. He worked for Warner Brothers briefly in the early 50s. He did a couple of them in the early 50s for Warner.
The one with the green shoes.
Yes. Wearing of the Grin with Porky Pig. And he also did the score for Jones at MGM when he did The Grinch. That was Podney did that.
Yeah, so
So
it's good. It's just, yeah,
very
it
talented
was just
guy.
different. But yeah, but thankfully, though, we are going to talk about Feline Frame-Up and not the Tom and Jerry shorts that Chuck did. Thank goodness for that, right? But as you said, and this is why you're on here, this is one of your favorites of all time. And for me, admittedly, I'd only seen this once before when I went through the Platinum Collection all those years ago. And rewatching this now, I could see why someone would love this one. It is great. It might not be a go-to short for me in the future or anything, but man, was this funny.
Yeah. And that's part of my reason for why it's one of my favorites is that if you grew up with pets, if you own pets, it's absolutely spot on. How pets they get into tiffs with each other, and they manipulate the owner. They fight with each other. Like, it's a cartoon for people that own pets, basically. I think you can get it if you did.
Even though I don't have a dog or a dog, as our friend Manny Cruz, the 2D tenor, would say, dog. But yeah, definitely the cats do sort of fight. They have their favorite spot, and if the other one tries to take the favorite spot, the other one gets upset, and yeah.
Pussyfoot is barely involved. You get Claude and Pussyfoot are arguing over their spot on the pillow. And of course, Mark Anthony, Bulldog, goes and defends Pussyfoot, and Claude gets jealous, and he abuses Pussyfoot and then stuffs him in a bottle. And we don't hear from Pussyfoot again until the end of the cartoon. It's just Claude and Mark Anthony going at it, and you get the master in there, voiced again by Robert Bruce, and it's just that dynamic, the feud between Claude and Mark Anthony. And just the timing of the gags as each one tries to get back at the other is just brilliant.
It's a pretty funny short, honestly. I love the dynamic between Mark Anthony and Pussyfoot in general. So having this extra obstacle of Claude Cat, who's usually portrayed in a hit or miss case. Sometimes he's portrayed as a victim. Other cases, he's portrayed as a bully. It just depends on, I guess, whatever Chuck Jones prefers the character to be doing. Having said that, it is kind of interesting how in this short, Claude is not only a bully, but he's also bringing out the worst in Mark Anthony. Because at the end of the day, Mark Anthony wants to set a good example for Pussyfoot. So to have Claude come in and basically steal Pussyfoot's seed, that it makes Mark Anthony really mad and overly offensive when in a more reasonable sense, he could just he could just indicate to his owner, like, hey, this cat's being a dick, but instead he would rather take his anger and violence out on Claude. And this causes the owner, voiced by the great Robert C. Bruce, to more or less snap back at Mark Anthony and tell him, like, hey, stop attacking the cats. That's not cool. So I don't know. It's kind of fascinating in that regard. And the timing is very sharp. The animation is super crisp. Mel Blanc does a great job as Claude and Mark Anthony in general, all the vocal effects. And yeah, just a very solid cartoon.
Oh, I don't really have too much to say outside of a few, maybe one gag here and there. I kind of feel like it might be one of the weaker Pussyfoot and Mark Anthony shorts, probably because Pussyfoot isn't really there that much to be a part of Mark Anthony's dynamic in a sense, because most of the screen time is basically Claude the Cat being this huge jerk to Mark Anthony, and he even puts Pussyfoot in his glass bottle, which is the reason why Pussyfoot doesn't have much screen time. And the dynamic is not really much shown there. However, it is still a very good cartoon and is really funny. But one observation I made is that this cartoon, in a way, it feels like the anti-Fresh Airedale, where in that cartoon, the dog is like portrayed as an actual jerk, even though he's supposed to be seen as like a good person. And with the cat, who is actually empathetic and wants to help, is if for the humans, like, they see him as just like a shifty, crafty, like, garbage kid, sort of. Meanwhile, with this, Claude the Cat is actually the villain, and Mark Anthony is actually the protagonist, and the roles are reversed, where the owner sees Claude the Cat as this, like, innocent victim, and Mark Anthony is justifyingly trying to take him down a peg. Even though at almost every single turn, the owner thinks otherwise. And it's not until at the end of the cartoon where all Claude has to do is basically sign this treaty that said, I admit it, I screwed up, I'm sorry. And he gets the fate that was similar to what Mark Anthony had in the beginning of the cartoon, but an even crueler fate where he gets like crashed by a train.
So I thought it was a train, but it's actually a bus, and it's a weird design. But anyway.
Yeah, but I do really like the cartoon in spite of some of the smaller problems. It's still really funny. I actually really like it a lot.
Looking at this short from the start, I reckon we'll go through why it's so damn funny. But before we do, that title card, it's very interesting, very abstract. I mean, as you say, it looks more like an abstract frame of sorts.
Yeah, well, that's Maurice Noble. And I've actually seen the original artwork from it, not in person, but it was on auction a while back, actually. And the idea is it looks like a picture frame. Of course, the cartoon is called Feline Frame-Up. And so it's like, okay, is it a picture frame? Or, when you say somebody's been framed, that means they're blamed for something they didn't do. So it's a total double entendre, which I think is pretty brilliant. So not only does the artwork represent it, does the title represent it, but also the situation. It's great.
Yeah, perfect title for this one. Perfect. And I wish Freeling took notes from Chuck regarding his titles, because given how generic and awful his ones are. But anyway,
yeah. Freeling didn't do the pun titles that much, or at least they didn't fit the cartoon. This one is the image on the title card, the subject matter, and the pun are all tied in.
Exactly. Unlike hairdo. It's like, really? Really, Frizz? Why hairdo? But anyway, that's another.
But this one, Feline Frame-Up, as our friend Manny would say, mwah, chef's kiss.
Yes, indeed. And so we start off, I like how it just starts off kind of brutal in a way. You see Pussyfoot just sleeping, and Claude just kicks him off the pillow straight away.
I have 2 cats. That's exactly what they do. Mine do that on the daily.
Exactly, and I have a feeling that Jones may be more of a dog person because of his observations regarding the frisky puppy and all that, but he has a lot of great observation regarding cats. I just like how then Claude's on the pillow, about to sleep, but then he just briefly scratches his head, which he didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But it's a great touch.
Yeah, it is. And cats do that. They use their back leg to scratch their head. They spin around, they turn around and find something to be a comfortable position. And then lie down, and then they close their eyes, and then they scratch themselves. It's totally brilliant animation, too.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And then we see, of course, the topper of that is that Mark Anthony then kicks Claude off the pillow and then puts Pussyfoot back on the pillow. It's great.
Yeah.
Great one, the slow-mo, by the way, as well.
That scene where Mark Anthony is just repeatedly punching him. Yeah, freeze frame that. And then all of a sudden the owner shows up, and he's got an umbrella or a cane? I guess it's an umbrella. And just keeps smacking Mark Anthony. Every time he smacks Mark Anthony still smacks Claude. Whack, whack, whack.
Oh, it's fantastic. And it's a great way to set up this entire short. So within the first minute or so, the whole premise is cleverly established that there's a rivalry between the 3 pets in a way. And and of course we've got the owner who's just not happy with how they're all fighting and not getting like he wants them to. So it's great.
And then the next scene you see, Mark Anthony is peacefully sleeping with his kitten friend, and Claude goes back and messes with him again. And that's where the frame-up comes in. Claude makes it look like Mark Anthony is trying to eat Pussyfoot. He puts Pussyfoot in Mark Anthony's mouth. And then he goes and snitches to the owner. You see this for 5 seconds. All you see is just the background. You don't see any character on screen. You hear him off screen. You hear Claude meowing at the owner, and the owner's like, well, why, Claude, what's bothering you? And then Claude shows up. He starts snitching, and Mark Anthony wakes up. He doesn't know what's going on. He's got the cat's tail hanging out of his mouth.
And speaking of holding poses, just in the scene before that, you even get the whole thing where Claude falls, Mark Anthony still catches him by the neck, and the pose is held just long enough for maximum effect, and then just, lets him go and punches him. And it's just, the timing is impeccable here. It's just, it's absolutely amazing.
And then the owner discovers Mark Anthony with the kitten's tail hanging out of his mouth. He's now the bad boy. He smacks Mark Anthony, gets him to spit out the kitten that he never put in his mouth by voluntarily in the first place, and kicks him out. And then you get Claude taunting him while he's outside. Claude smacks Pussyfoot, which of course is just like, man, that's really cruel. Like Claude in this cartoon, it establishes that Claude is a jerk. Claude is an a-hole. Okay? He puts Pussyfoot in a jar, which I guess is like an umbrella stand or something. I don't know why there's a jar sitting there by the front door. And then, of course, Mark Anthony is now angry, and now we've got the rest of the cartoon for Mark Anthony and Claude to duke it out.
Yep, it's all set up perfectly. And we even get the added touch where, okay, so Claude effectively tortures Pussyfoot for that little bit, puts him in the thing, so we don't see Pussyfoot until the very end of the short after this point. And you see Claude making biscuits, because once again, observational about cats, right? They're going to make biscuits, aren't they?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, the whole kneading the pillow. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. And then Mark gets Claude by the tail via a rope, but smashes Claude against the door.
Yeah.
And the owner's having none of that, of course.
Yeah. And that's a mail slot. That might be something that people don't have anymore. I don't know, but it used to be some people had a mailbox outside their front door back in the day, and some people had a mail slot. There was a little drop-off slot in the front door. The mailman would just put their mail through it, and that's what he's doing there.
Yeah, exactly. Although with those sort of mail slots, it wouldn't be exactly useful these days with people ordering from Amazon and that. But anyway,
yeah, the Amazon package wouldn't fit through that.
Definitely not. But yeah, Claude is now effectively tormenting Mark by imitating through the window of this door and altering his face. And my goodness, I really chuckled at that. Like, especially when he imitates Mark Anthony's face.
Where he pulls down his face like jowls, like the bulldog. And then Mark Anthony uses the slats on the patio, on the porch, stomps the board, and then smacks him, which technically no house is constructed that way. The board would actually be cut off at the door and all that, but cartoon logic again.
Yeah, it's funny. I love that. It was just, I didn't expect it. It was just like, wow, okay, well, that's one way to get him, of course. But then the Mark Anthony counting bit, which I'll get you to explain, because damn, this was perfect.
Perfect timing. And this is Carl Stalling at work, where, okay, we need a certain amount of beats to get this gag. So it's Mark Anthony's counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then he puts up a ladder, and he's got an X marks the spot. And you think he knows where Claude is on the floor. And so he takes the saw, and he's sawing through the floor in the basement. And he miscalculated, is the joke. And he gets the owner. And the owner looks at him in this priceless face, Chuck Jones pose, of course. And you don't actually see what the owner does, except that you see him flying out of the basement, like the owner kicked his butt up the stairs.
Yeah, just the expression of this owner, which you don't think much of the owner, but damn, it's funny. He's like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
I was sitting in my chair, and I was reading my magazine, and you sawed through the floor, and you knocked me down to the basement. Really? You could see him flip out. You could see him go crazy. You could see him be angry. You could see him do all that. No, you don't see any of that. You see the shot of him with that expression. He looks at him. Then we cut to the exterior shot, and we see Mark Anthony flying up the stairs. That's all you see. You don't need any kind of elaborate animation or anything. You just see that, and that's just wow.
My favorite gag is where Mark Anthony basically steps on the plank, which causes Claude to hit the ceiling, and where Mark Anthony is counting steps to try to trap Claude the cat. And you see this owner with this annoyed look on his face, but what kills me in that one is Mark Anthony is like, oh no, I'm completely innocent, and you even hear Mel Blanc's little innocent laugh. And makes him think like, oh no, I didn't do this at all. It's really funny, and I love the timing of it.
And then we cut to the next scene.
Yeah, exactly. And somehow Mark has artificial snow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That he ordered from Acme, Ajax, we don't know. There's no brand name on there, is it? Nope, there's no brand name.
No, this is the cheap imitation artificial snow.
It's the Wish.com, the Temu, the dollar store, it's generic brand fake snow. But it's fake snow on July 12th, which ironically is 10 days ago from when we were recording this.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, the joke probably wouldn't work as well here because it's actually winter in July here, whereas I know you guys have had a pretty hot summers.
It is July here, so it is summer.
And look, it's a simple little gag. Why not? I loved the next bit because I'm thinking, what exactly was Mark trying to achieve here? So he's in a box like a present? Who did Mark think was going to bring in this box? Of course the owner's going to bring it in. Of course the owner's going to open it up. So what exactly, how...
I don't know, but I love Robert Bruce's delivery. It's like, what's Harriet bought now? He thinks it's something the wife ordered. But yeah, what did Mark Anthony think it was going to do? I don't know. Did he think?
So good.
And then, of course, he pops right out of the box and starts popping Claude in the face again. And he gets thrown out again.
Yeah, and that's a good one to slow-mo, by the way. That punching part out of the present, as
Yeah.
Manny says, chef's kiss.
Yeah, it's like a repeated cycle, like bam, 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 bam. Yeah, perfect.
So in terms of my favorite gag, it would probably have to be a toss-up between the present scene, if only just because of the end result and the hilarious pose from the owner, and the snow gag where Mark Anthony tricks Claude into thinking that there's snow outside, only to slam the window on his neck. It's a pretty funny scene, all things considered, but I love that. And then after Mark Anthony flicks Claude on the nose, the owner immediately just punches him back. The timing on that was just great. And I think animator Richard Thompson animated that scene. Richard Thompson, I believe, was known for following Chuck Jones' style pretty well, but also exaggerating a lot of poses and motion every now and then. So he fit everything pretty well as far as what Chuck wanted out of his animators, but still making it his own.
And again, another quick cut, and we've got Claude. He's back in the bed in the pillow again, and we see this balloon come up out of the front door and magically unhooks the door hook, and then we see Mark Anthony again go and pummel Claude. And finally, Claude pulls up a white flag, like a surrender flag. And finally, Claude admits to what a jerk he's been.
Can we just say how absurd a lot of this is? I mean, you got the owner, he thinks not much of the fact that his own dog could saw a hole in the floor, right? That is unusual in its own. But he doesn't think twice about the fact that his cat has something written and signed and all that.
His cat can write to him. But again, it happens so fast and it's so well timed that you don't question the cartoon logic.
Yeah.
Why would you?
Oh, it's funny. Yeah, it's still easy, but it's just, shouldn't you be more excited over the fact that your cat can actually write? But anyway, I don't.
Again, you don't get enough time. It's so well timed that you don't get enough time to question it. And then now Mark Anthony is back inside, and he brings Pussyfoot back to his rightful post and kicks Claude out, and Claude is thrown out in the street, and Claude gets run over by a bus.
For some reason, when I first saw it, I had to rewind it just to double check. It seemed like it looked like the front of a train, which would make no sense, of course. But I was looking at it going, is that a train? And then I went back, it's like, oh, looks like a bus kind of thing. I don't know. But anyway, just a weird design.
I always thought it was just a weird looking bus. Because it's the street, it's not train tracks. So
correct. Yeah, that's why I was
Bus.
like, at first it's, wait a minute, that can't be a train. I had to rewatch it just to see what it was. But whatever.
But he's thrown out into the street into traffic, gets run over, and then he delivers this great line by Mel Blanc. The only line that Blanc utters in the cartoon, other than the Mark Anthony, the counting bit, it's Claude, and he's just one of those days, I guess. And we've all had days like that.
Indeed. Especially after work, yeah, for sure.
It's one of my favorites. I think it's perfect. It's a 10 out of 10 for me, for sure.
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. I can understand that.
Oh, my rating is an 8 out of 10. Even though it's one of the weaker Mark Anthony and Pussyfoot shorts, I think it's more focused on being a comedy rather than the awe factor, and I actually think it kind of works. There's still some really great gags in animation, and the owner was still a really funny character, and I love the punchline. And I think it's a really great cartoon.
In terms of my own rating, I'm going to give this, it is an 8 out of 10, but it's pretty close to being a 9. And I always say that because the mean-spirited angle, I don't think it's everyone's cup of tea. You might not respond quite well to it compared to other stuff. But yeah, regardless, very solid cartoon, very funny, a lot of great performances, especially from Robert T. Bruce. Great timing, great animation, just great everything. Chuck Jones was really at his prime during this time, and I really appreciate him for that. Yep, that's all I got to say. Just one of those days, I guess.
Now, I can't quite give it a 10 because I guess nostalgia quite plays a part, but you know what? I'm going to give it a nice high 9.5 out of 10. It is really good. I was pleasantly surprised. Again, I'd seen it before, but only once. And watching it now again, yeah, I agree. This is such a well-made cartoon. It's
Yeah, no,
yeah, it's a nice little gem. I think that people need to really rediscover. If I'm being honest,
I
yeah.
agree. I've
Yeah.
been saying so since I saw it back when I was, I don't know, 10 years old. It used to be on Nickelodeon all the time. I saw it on TV and I just fell in love with it. I thought it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I still think it is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But that will do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And until next time, take care. Just one of those days, I guess. So.
Just one of those days, I guess.